Spot for success. I wanted to find that meaning. Doing some research and some prep for the show last night. This is according to dictionary.com, the sweet spot, just the sweet spot. According to dictionary.com, an optimum point of combination of factors or qualities that is best or most effective for people when they're, again, trying to find that sweet spot. So it's like a baseball or softball bat, right?
Well
That
done.
small little spot that you need to hit, finding that optimum point in the bat, finding that optimum point in athletics, your sweet spot for success.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I wouldn't have even thought dictionary would have defined sweet spot because I've always thought of it like either a term that really only baseball, softball players know because of the bat, or maybe people who have been involved in some form of psych where they're like, okay, yeah, this is our sweet spot where we're operating at the optimal level of anxiety, let's say, or we're in that state of flow. But that's a perfect definition, I think.
Okay, so finding the sweet spot. Now, there's another part of this that I want to define with you as well, and just give an example. Finding the sweet spot where no part of the body feels as if it's working too hard.
Mm.
And I mean, you're into fitness, and you have a great background in kinesiology, so you understand too that this not only stretches from baseball to softball, but it goes all the way out and weaves its way into the fitness world as well. For those who lift, for those who work out, for those who whatever program you're doing, if you're working too hard in athletics or working really too hard at anything, I think that you're at that point working against yourself, and you're going away from trying to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, I think too, because you might hear that. And if you're someone who really attaches your pride to work ethic, you might be like, no, I pride myself in being able to grind through difficult situations. And it's not necessarily saying that, but it's saying that if every single day you're waking up and it is taking all that you got to have to get yourself through your routine, you're probably not at your sweet spot for your routine. If you're going through your lift, and again, it's taking everything you got to go through this, it's nothing feels easy. Nothing about everything about it is hard. You're probably not in the right training program. So if you're swinging a bat and it feels like there's a lot of effort going into this in order for me to just get a basic result, again, we're not at that sweet spot. We're probably too far into one direction. And we need to figure out ways and techniques to teeter ourselves back to neutral.
I mentioned that pendulum swinging one way or the other earlier in the show, right at the beginning, and talking about that with going one way or the other. Sometimes you've mentioned this before, and it was in your post as well. Sometimes you're too anxious, and other times you're not locked in enough, and you're trying to
Mhm.
find that middle ground.
Sure. And, I had, you can use so many different visual cues for this. I had used what looked seemingly like a bell curve
Mhm.
where you have this optimal level of anxiety. And I think the reason I termed it is because I had so many athletes that were almost afraid of anxiousness. They were afraid to feel any of those nerves. And what I wanted to showcase is that there's, when we talk about it, they started to agree there is an optimal level. We don't want to be too low where you've played baseball in the Northeast. It's 40 something degrees. It is cold. You're miserable. The game's not moving fast. Maybe you're winning 10 to 12 to nothing in the sixth inning and you still have an at bat. You are not going to feel very good because you're too low. We don't have any positive anxiety circulating through us to help us lock in, focus in, and have a really productive, good at bat. Whereas on the flip end, at the other extreme,
Mhm.
middle of the summer, every college coach is watching you. It's the bottom of the seventh with the bases loaded. And all of a sudden you start to feel your hand shake. Maybe your knees start to shake. And that is, too much anxiety in the other direction. So the extremes are easy to recognize. It's how do we recognize when we're where we need to be in the sweet spot area and when we first start to deviate.
I don't you mentioned something in there, playing in the Northeast. I'm not so sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know though if playing in the Northeast or playing in a warm weather climate really has much to do with sweet spot for finding that sweet spot for success. And I say that because, everybody always says, well, with players who play in warm weather climates, they're better players. But if they mentally can't find that sweet spot for success, and I don't care if it's baseball, I don't care if it's shooting free throws and basketball, but we're talking more about outdoor sports here. If they can't find that middle ground and where they need to be mentally, then physically they're just not going to perform, and everything is going to be very, very tight for them.
Sure. And you know what? Maybe that was me projecting my my personal experience with checking out in really cold games
Yeah.
back
Well,
home.
you're right. No, you're exactly right. But you're exactly right with that.
Right,
But
but
I'm
it's
just
not,
wondering,
not
yeah,
contingent
athletes in
on
general.
that. Yeah, for sure. And you know what? We talk about mental performance preparation for a game. How are you visualizing? What are you talking about with your coaches? How are you assessing your personal confidence level? What's your body language, your negative self-talk? All of those things are going to help you find that sweet spot. It's not going to be just one thing where it says, oh, you do this one thing, you're going to be exactly where you need to be. Of course, it's going to be a process. Of course, it's going to take work and take time. But I really do think that first piece is just the initial awareness of, oh, wow, I'm here. And when do I first leave here? When do I first start to deviate too high or too low?